Good afternoon and welcome to the Born to Lead live broadcast. It's a warm or rather cool afternoon out here over in the FCT of Nigeria. Thank you for joining me at this time and thank you for not relenting and being a part of the leadership training that has always gone on at 1 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube live stream. Today, I'll be talking about becoming successful. Successful. Now, a number of people have asked these questions at several fora, and I've tried to give answers that may be helpful or may have tended to give direction as to what it means to be successful. So today, I'm going to take some time out to talk about this. My guess is not everyone will agree with everything that I'm going to mention, but I know that for every leader to be successful, for every one of us to be successful, there are certain steps that we need to take. And those steps are clearly spelled out. And I'm going to speak from my perspective as I would understand what success means. So if you agree with me, I would commence this in a short while. Now, for those of you who are coming online already with me, I would appreciate that we interact via this forum or this forum as it were, and you could do so by dropping your comments, by relating with me via questions and by raising issues that may be necessary for us to have a sound and robust discussion as far as the concept of successful leadership is concerned. Today, I'm going to just look at the individual's life, what it means for an individual to be successful. That's what I'm going to attempt to share with us today so that we know whether we're succeeding or not, and then we know what we need to do to succeed as we go along in life. So, if you don't mind, like I said, thank you for coming online with me, and thank you for being a part and parcel of this training. And if you don't mind, we'll go straight into the issues as I'll want them, I'll have them to be discussed. Now, excuse me, let me mention this. A number of people have also wondered why a number of supposedly successful people have tended to commit suicide. Okay? You and I know actors, sports personalities, politicians, pastors, imams, perhaps, and a whole lot of other people whom we have categorized as being successful but ended up living woefully or ended up dying in circumstances that were unpleasant. Now, for me, that's a clear indication that even though they lived and in the eyes of others looked or felt successful, they were not successful because there was still a gap, there was still a hole, there was still some space in their heart that were not filled up, that were not taken up, that made them feel void, made them feel empty, and so they terminated their life, whether by suicide, well, of course, by suicide as it were. I'm just using that as an example. Or they died miserably on their sick bed. Okay? Now, success is such a fluid term. It's such a fluid term that it takes a whole lot of thinking to define whether you are successful or not. Okay? It takes a whole lot of thinking to find out whether you are successful or not. And for me, I would say that the definition of success should be your first goal in life. Your definition of success should be your first goal in life. Now, a number of us do not know what it means to succeed. All right? A number of us do not know whether we are succeeding or not. And that has become a whole lot of a challenge for people out there. So, for you to succeed or for you to know whether you are succeeding or not, the first point I would like to raise is for you to do what? To define clearly what success means. To define clearly what success means. Because how you see things will determine how you relate with those things. Okay? How you see a building will determine how you relate with that building. Now, I from the slide you would see the story of five blind men who defined an elephant. Okay, I learned this many years ago when I went to the university to study law, and we were asked to define law. Now, several people gave a definition of law from different angles and different perspectives. And this lecturer shared this story with us that five blind men were approached and told to define what was standing before them. Of course, they were blind. One was kept by the feet at the back, one was kept by the trunk, one was kept by the ear, one was kept by the body, and so on and so forth. Now, in defining the elephant, the one that was standing by the legs said an elephant is an animal with a big trunk or that feels like a trunk of a tree. Okay? And the other in front yelled and said, no, you are not correct. That the elephant is not a trunk, it's not a tree trunk. The elephant is an animal that has a long rope in front of it because that one was feeling the trunk and felt and thought it was a rope or it felt ropey. And the other said, no, the elephant is an animal that is very flappy, very large and flappy because he was touching the ear. So for him, it seemed flappy and so on and so forth. And the person who touched the body also gave a different definition of what the elephant is. Now, all of them were correct and yet wrong at the same point, at the same time. Why? Because their definition was narrowed and they looked at life from the angle from which they were touching or feeling what they were feeling. So that indicated that they were right by describing the places that they were touching, but they were wrong in thinking that the whole elephant was in that same shape or that same size, from depending on the angle that each of them were looking at it from. So now, for you to define success, you have got to understand away from your angle, away from your perspective, what success means. Okay? If you define success by your perspective, if you define success by the angle of life that you look at things, then you are likely going to be correct and yet wrong at the same time. Now, for me, how do I define success? There are just four simple ways in which I define success. Now, the human being, you and I, are a complete entity, but we're subdivided in four dimensions. We're subdivided in four dimensions. And for me, success is growing sufficiently in these four dimensions. If there is a collaboration, a synchronization of these four sections of life, then everyone that comes across you, everyone that comes in contact with you, will have no choice but to suggest or to agree that you are successful. And for me, these four angles are just broken down in the following way. First, wisdom. And by this I mean your intellect, your ability to think correctly, your ability to communicate correctly with your environment, your ability to learn, constantly learn. Okay? Every good leader learns on a daily basis. Every good leader improves in terms of knowledge and in terms of wisdom on a daily basis. Now, what is the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Knowledge is the ability to know, okay? Is the ability to gather information, to gather data. Wisdom is the ability to apply that data, to apply that knowledge to your life, to improve you on a daily basis. So, if you must be successful, you must be successful not only in knowing, but successful also in applying what you have learned to your well-being. So for me, this is one definition of the human part that also needs to grow. The other is that you must grow in stature. And by this I mean that physically you must grow healthy. A number of us grow in terms of knowledge, but are unable to translate that knowledge into good health. So everything that comes by, we eat. Everything that shows itself before us, we consume. We do not exercise, or at least we rarely exercise. And even if we exercise, we just exercise once in a while. Okay? Just between the lines. Now, that isn't good. If you want to be successful, you must also be of good health. And for you to be of good health, you must know what you eat, how you eat, when you eat. You must also know how to exercise and what exercise to do. You must also know when to sleep, how to sleep, and where to sleep. All these are important if you must define success correctly. Now, this we must take note of. The other is to be in favor with men. And what do I mean? Now, all of us have relationships. You have parents, whether they are late, you had them. Okay? You probably are the only child of your parents, but you have got uncles, you have got aunties, you have got nephews, you have got nieces all around you. You have got neighbors, next door neighbors. Okay? Now, for you to be successful, or for you to be considered to be successful, you must be someone who is in good terms with everyone around you. Yes, some people can be very annoying. Some people can be troubling. But the truth is that you must have a sound relationship as long as it lies with you to have a sound relationship with people. To be in favor with men is to be of good standing in the eyes of the society. I'm not talking about reputation, I'm talking about integrity, I'm talking about character. I'm not talking about what you do for people to see, I'm talking about what you do when people are not even looking at you. Now, for you to be in good standing with people, you have got to be a man or a person of integrity. You have got to be a person who is friendly. If you are friendly, you must show yourself as being friendly. Again, I've heard this term several times where people say, they have had issues with people and they tell you, well, I've forgiven this person, but talking with that person will never be possible anymore. And I tell them, it means you have not forgiven the person. And for you to be successful, you must have a sound relationship with people around you. There are people who find it difficult to even relate with their family members. There are siblings who are at war with one another. There are children who are at war with their parents, parents at war with their children. Now, if any relationship around you isn't successful, isn't smooth, isn't working appropriately, it means that your success is questionable. And every good leader has a sound relationship with people around him. When you meet someone for the first time, the person should be able to move around and walk away from you to say, I have met a good person. That is what it means to be in favor with men. And the other aspect of man is the aspect of spirituality, your spirituality. So you must be in favor with your spiritual well-being. Let me use that. For me, it is God. God is my origin. God is my source. I believe in the story of creation. I believe there is God Almighty out beyond this world that sits somewhere in heaven and rules over the affairs of men. I believe that so well. For me to be considered successful, or for me to consider myself as being successful, I consider that I must have a successful relationship with this God. And by the way, I'm talking about the God who does not fight those that he has created, even when we fight him. I'm also talking about the God who knows our helplessness and sends help part time and as may be necessary or required from time to time. So, for you to be successful, first you must define success appropriately. And my definition of success is that I grow in wisdom, I grow in stature, I grow in favor with men, I also grow in favor with God. For me, that is how I define success. Now, I do not know how you define success, but I tell you that for you to be successful, you must first of all have an appropriate definition of what success is. Now, unless you have an appropriate definition of what success is, you cannot be said to be successful. You cannot be said to be successful. Now, so that is the first point in living a successful life. What is the second point in living a successful life? For me, the second point is to know your purpose. To know your purpose, not just for the sake of knowing, but for the sake of living out your purpose. Okay? For the sake of living out your purpose. At creation, every one of us came with a purpose. I just talked about my relationship with God earlier on, and I'm building this discussion on that perspective, which is that when God created the earth and created man, he created every individual with a specific purpose, that you and I must know, and you and I must pursue, and you and I must accomplish. Now, to accomplish your purpose is to live a successful life. That and it wasn't operating in the manner that you supposed it to operate. You know what that means? That will clearly indicate that you are not living a successful life. Okay? Or that the mobile phone is not operating by success or is not operating successfully in the manner that you thought it should operate. And that's the same thing with humans. It's the same thing with humans. If you want to be successful, you must know your purpose, you must pursue your purpose, you must live out your purpose on a daily basis. Mark Twain says this: the two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you found out why. The two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. I dare say also that the day you die is quite important because it marks the end of your life and it determines where you spend. Okay, it marks the end of your life here on earth and it determines where you spend the rest of it beyond the earth. Again, this is a discussion for another day. How do you find out your purpose? How do you find out your purpose? Let me say this. To find out your purpose, you've got to find out what are the things you do with ease. is the thing that you do that whether they pay you or not, you will successfully do it and yet be very satisfied whether anybody notices it or not, whether you are applauded for it or not. That is an indication of what your purpose is. It's a clear indication when you do things helplessly and effortlessly, rather, when you do things effortlessly and you do them whether you are going to be paid or not, and you can do them late up to the latest point at night and wake up in the morning and it becomes the first thing that you are pursuing. That's a clear indication that your purpose may lie in that thing. Of course, I'm not talking about browsing on your internet or spending time on your social media, because for some, as I speak now, that you spend late nights on your social media and you wake up very early is the first thing you are thinking. They think that that is what I'm referring to. No. But you see, perhaps communication, if you are communicating on social media late at night, you wake up early in the morning is the thing you are thinking of, perhaps communication is where your purpose lies. Okay? But you've got to dig to find out what that purpose is and where it lies. Okay? The other tip to finding out is to remember what your childhood desires were. When I was growing up, I had a desire to teach. I also had a desire to become a pastor. Those were the two things that interested me the most. And well, interestingly, the desire to teach was based on the fact that I also enjoyed the fact that I would hold a cane and whip students from time to time. That stirred up the desire to want to teach in me, okay? But also in addition to that, to pass on knowledge, everything I learned, I would desire to want to pass it on to another person. You see, I grew up, the world messed up with my life, I became a lawyer, but over time, before I knew it, I began to teach. I'm teaching leadership right now. I began to teach leadership and to teach other issues of life. Then, before I knew it, I was teaching in churches, even though I've never called myself a pastor, but it would seem that those childhood desires have culminated and have become reality in my life at the moment. Go back to your childhood desires for you to be able to determine what your purpose is. The sad thing about life is that as children, we are creative, we have desires, but in this society, for example, in Nigeria or in Africa, your parents would want to determine for you how your life should run. A number of us have missed out on what our childhood desires are. Now, your childhood desire will give you a clear indication as to what your life purpose is. Now, besides that, I will quote Oprah Winfrey. She says, "You know you are on the road to success if you will do your job and not be paid for it." I mentioned earlier on, find out what is that thing that excites you to do. What excited Michael Jordan was basketball. What excited Michael Jackson was music. What excited Mike Tyson was boxing. What excites Cristiano Ronaldo is football. What excited other leaders, okay? What excited them was what they poured their lives and hearts to do. What excited Billy Graham was gathering a huge crowd and speaking to them and getting them to make decisions concerning their faith. And he lived out that purpose to the age of 99. What excited Nelson Mandela was to stand up for the rights of people. What excited Mother Teresa was to help the poor, and she did that until she died. There are so many other leaders in that perspective who discovered what their purposes were, and they pursued these purposes even to the end of their lives. So for you to be considered successful, like I've said, first and foremost, you have to have a right definition of success. A right definition of success. Some people define success as having plenty of wealth. Some define success as traveling around the world. Some define success as having control of empires of companies and so on and so forth. Those may be right in their own sense, but they are incomplete, like I say to you. I try to define success, and I said the human life is broken into four. If you are successful in those four angles, no matter what status you occupy in society, you will be found out or you will be considered as being successful. And the second point is to know and pursue your purpose. I've done a lengthy teaching on knowing how to identify and pursue your purpose. You may go back on my Facebook page or go to the Born to Lead page on YouTube and find out what it means to know your purpose and to pursue your purpose. Now, the next point, all right, is for you to be successful, you must be a disciplined person. You must be a disciplined person. A number of us have failed to understand what it means to be disciplined. A disciplined person is a self-controlled person. What does it mean to be self-controlled? Again, I've done a lengthy teaching on what it means to be disciplined and what it means to be self-controlled. Now, go to Shadrach Bako on Facebook or Born to Lead on Facebook, the page, or Born to Lead on YouTube. Go to any of those pages and check what it means to be self-controlled and what it means to be disciplined. But by way of layman definition, self-control simply means putting control on yourself. Setting high standards by which you are guided and controlled by. The world is fluid, is loose, especially in this time when humanity thinks that everything goes. We've come to the point where people have come up with a philosophy that you cannot say there is an absolute right or there's an absolute wrong. What is right for you is right for you. If it is wrong for you, it is wrong for you. That isn't true. Life in itself is absolute. Because it starts someday and ends someday. That is absolute. There is nothing any one of us can do about it. Therefore, you must grab onto the things that are right. You must grab up to the things that are absolute. You must hold on to the things that indicate discipline in your life. And what does it mean to be disciplined? Like I've mentioned, there are several places where I have taught on discipline, on self-discipline. You must check again on YouTube, Born to Lead page. You must check on Shadrach Bako on Facebook. You must check on Born to Lead also on Facebook. All these you will see that teaching on self-discipline and self-control. But for today, let me just summarize by saying that people who are self-disciplined or self-controlled respect and use time appropriately. In this part of the globe, we say there is African time. And by African time, what we mean is that we go late or start programs late. And we forget or fail to take note that by refusing to adhere to times that have been stipulated for certain things, that it has a boomerang effect on all the other aspects of our lives. If you're unable to respect time as should be respected, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, it has a boomerang effect on every other thing that you do in life. So, people of discipline, people of self control or self respect, respect and use time appropriately. You cannot schedule a meeting for 1 a.m. and by 1:30, 1:15, 1:30, you have not started the meeting. Delay that because you claim that it is African time. Excuse me, there is no African sun. There is no African sun. There is no African moon. There is no African night. There is no African day. Therefore, there cannot be African time. And of course, a famous musician sang, "Time waits for no one." And I agree. This time I am using will not come around again for me to use. As I use it, it passes by. You must learn to respect and to use time appropriately if you must be successful in life. There are so many people I have cut off because they have become a hindrance to my use of time. Successful people use time appropriately. When there is a 10 a.m. schedule, they are there quarter to 10 to be seated properly and to be adjusted even before the program commences. Disciplined people plan their life and follow through their plan. About 2 weekends ago, I was speaking with some young girls about what they prospect that their lives would be in the next 10 years. And once I mentioned that, they looked at me and they were looking around and wondering as if I was talking something strange. And I indicated to them, if I opened my laptop at that moment, they would see clearly that I've got a 10-year plan that commenced 2 years ago. And incidentally, I am within plan as per the things that I've scheduled for the time period. In fact, this broadcast was penciled down 2 years ago to commence this year, and it commenced this year. Why? Because I have a plan and I'm following through with the plan to be sure that everything on the schedule falls in appropriately. To be successful, you must have a plan for your life and you must follow through that plan. And I challenge you, as you listen to me, think right now, in the next 10 years, what should I be doing? Where should I be? Most of us will have no grip on that. Most of us will be guessing. But unless you plan it, okay? Unless you plan it, you will miss out on the things that you should be enjoying in the nearest future. Now, this is one thing about plan. If you can take time to plan and write it down on paper, two things happen. One, everything about nature conspires to ensure that the plan works. Everything about nature. And I give you an example. 2 years ago, I indicated that in the next 3-4 years, I would like to be speaking to about 1 million people weekly, as it were, in gatherings across the world. Now, little did I anticipate that I would get an invitation from a radio station to speak weekly about leadership. And before I knew it, that station invited me and I began to speak about leadership. They gave me 2 months to speak about leadership. And for 8 sessions, I spoke successfully to leadership. Now, when I came back after one of these sessions to check what was the coverage of this radio station and how were people listening, and I got a wind of it, and I was shocked. The radio station reached 4 states, and within those 4 states, it had a listenership of about 15 million people. So the indication is that about 15 million people, but let's cut out 50% of that. About 7 million people listened to me whenever I spoke. Now, for me, that was nature conspiring to agree with my plan. The second thing is that when you have the plan written out, it becomes easier for you to constantly make an assessment of yourself. So you go back again and again to look at the plan, to make an assessment of yourself, to be sure. Now that helps you know whether you are moving forward or not, whether you are succeeding or not. And it helps you make adjustments from time to time. So people who are successful are people who plan their life and follow through with their plans. For you to be disciplined, you must also overcome laziness. You must also overcome laziness and procrastination. For me to do the slides I'm speaking to you about right now, I had to do them yesterday, a day before today's broadcast. Why? I had planned on my schedule. If you look at my calendar, I had planned on my schedule to do them yesterday. I felt extremely lazy yesterday. But because I had a plan written down, and that was because for several weeks now, I've not had sufficient sleep, as it were, because I've been reading and pursuing certain things. Okay? And yesterday, so I just had a thought, relax, 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 there's still more time. But once I remembered that procrastination is the thief of time, I rose up immediately and did this slide. Now, to be successful, you must overcome laziness. You must overcome procrastination. Procrastination is putting things or avoiding to do things when you should be doing them and putting them off for later time. That is quite tricky. That is quite dangerous. You must take all the time available to work. Last week, Wednesday, I did a teaching and I indicated that laziness will make you poor. There is no food for the lazy man. To be successful, you must take action. There are people who plan but do not take action. Sadly, there are people who take action but it isn't the right action. Again, that isn't appropriate. You must take the right action. In taking action, you must do things necessary for your growth. I indicated when we start that your definition of success must be appropriate. And for me, there were 4 areas of life that if I grew in them, I knew or know that I am successful, regardless of whether I am wealthy or not. Regardless of whether I'm wealthy or not. Now, this is something that you must take note of. You must take the right action. You must do things necessary for your growth. Now, to do things necessary for my growth, 1, I read always. I'm a slow reader, but I read. Okay? 2, again, I have the tendency to be a lazy person, but I exercise. I rise up and exercise as may be necessary. Relating with people is the easiest thing that I do. So, and I constantly learn what it means to relate with people and to relate with them successfully. The Bible is my best book ever. Why? It helps me grow spiritually. So, For you to be disciplined, you must do things necessary for your growth. And the next is that you must be resilient. Resilience is the ability to turn bad situations into good situations and keep on moving. Now, you and I would agree that it isn't every situation of life that is pleasant for us as human beings. It isn't every situation of life that is pleasant for us as human beings. Sometimes we lose loved ones, sometimes we lose monies, sometimes we lose out in investments. I farm also. Sometimes I plant crops and the crops are dying or they are dead. In fact, I have grow bags at home right now, about 500 of them. I planted noni seed, but waited for over a month and they didn't sprout. Not a single one sprouted. Would I give up on planting? No. I thought of other crops to grow in this grow bag, and I've gotten other crops, and right now I've gotten soursop, I've gotten avocado, and they have sprung up and they are growing beautifully. Why? Because I've been resilient. Even though I suffered a setback, I didn't let the setback set me back. I rose beyond it. For you to be successful, you must be disciplined. For you to be disciplined, you must be resilient. You must learn to turn negatives into positives. You must learn to strive when things are not going the way that they should go. Resilient people are always successful people. Always. So these are the three tips. The fourth and perhaps the final tip on how to live a successful life is that we must think of the next generation. Let me ask at this point, do you have any younger person learning from you? Do you have any human being, whether younger or older than you, that looks up to you? Do you have anybody that you relate with for the essence of teaching the person what you already know so that the person can carry on and improve on what you already know? You must think of the next generation. That is one way to be successful. You are never successful unless your successor succeeds. The bane of the third world countries, Nigeria inclusive, is that we have changed governments after governments without any succession plan. Governments have taken over government, and rather than continue on what the previous government had planned, the new government comes, changes everything completely, and takes us back to square one, and we begin as if we had not started before. The bane of our society is that we do not have successors. And for as long as you live without a successor, you can be sure that even if you claim to be successful, your success will not outlive you. Successful people have successes that outlive them. When Martin Luther King Jr. in the USA fought for the rights of Black people, all right, to be absorbed into the society as everyday people, he had a large number of success, or a huge size of success, so to speak. And after him, men like men took after him. But it would seem that after that generation had passed, everybody forgot about the rights of the Black. No wonder today we have Black Lives Matter, the group fighting for the rights of the blacks in the USA and the world over, so to speak. But imagine that the force, the momentum at which Martin Luther King fought for the rights of all humans was the right that people fought after him, or the right that people who succeeded him continued at that pace. You can imagine what it would have been in the US at the moment. You can imagine what it would have been at the moment in the US. But sadly, it would seem that after Martin Luther King's situation, the rights of people, or the rights of blacks, were neglected, and that in fact people stopped fighting for the rights of others. And today we're back to the point where we were many years ago. Now, successful people, just like I've been quoted by a friend, successful people have successes that outlived them. This is over 2,000 years when the Jewish teacher called Jesus taught a few men, 12 of them, 11 succeeded him. Thousands of years after, there is hardly a second that his name is not mentioned. Why? He related with people, he passed on his life to them, and these people related with other people and passed on their lives to other people, and for thousands of years, this has continued to unfold. It is the same thing in other claims, in other religions, in other faiths. Islam is growing because a man taught Islam, translated it into some people's lives. Those people grew up, took it and passed it on to other people, and they are passing it on continually. Hinduism has been here for long, again, because the advocates trained people and passed it on. And I'm raising these examples because you see, in times past, people knew the value of mentoring younger generation and passing on their successes to them. But today, the concept of mentorship has vanished. It has fast eluded us. It is so terrible that parents cannot even mentor their children. No wonder marriages are breaking up. No wonder homes are being shattered. There are marriages that have spent less than 6 months and are pieces and are scattered. Meanwhile, there are marriages that are lasting long, even though things are not as pleasant as they should be in the marriages, but because their parents mentored them on what it means to keep the family bond together, those families have continued to thrive, or have continued to exist, as it were. Now, for you to pass on your success to people, you must first of all do what? Relate. You must first of all relate with people. Leadership is about people. It is not over people, it is about people. And unless you relate with people, you cannot pass on your success to them. There are companies that have lasted for hundreds of years. Lever Brothers, for example. Why? Because from the onset, the originators passed it on. They related with people who came, took over the businesses, and continue to thrive with the business. Meanwhile, there are those that have just lasted 10, 15 years. The owners have died, and the businesses died with them. You must relate with people to be able to pass on your success and teach them the tricks of maintaining your success even after you've gone. For you to attract people to relate with you, you must live as an example. Again, there are children who are ashamed of how their parents are living. For you to have people or for you to attract people to yourself, you must live as an example. And to live as an example means you've got to have a life of integrity, you've got to work hard, you've got to live disciplined, you've got to show respect to humanity and to people, you've got to grow spiritually, you've got to grow health-wise, grow in wisdom, and also grow in your relationship with other people. That's how to live a life or an exemplary life. And for you to live a successful life, you must train younger ones. Again, Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z are begging for people who will train them, especially Generation Z. I've got a couple of them around me, including my own children, and I've made every effort. I may not have succeeded yet, but I've made every effort to be able to develop them and train them in the way that they should go. I'm hoping that when I'm no more, one of them will continue in this path of training people. And of course, they are beginning to show interest and to show indication that they connect with what I'm doing and that they are willing to go the full hog as far as this is concerned. For you to be considered successful, you must learn to train the younger generation. You must learn to discipline the younger generation. Let me go over this again one more time as we round up what it means to be successful. The first, I say you must have the right definition of success. And for me, the right definition of success is that you must grow in 4 aspects of your life. You must grow in wisdom, which is to say, you must be wise. You must not just be knowledgeable, you must apply your knowledge to your daily life that it becomes wisdom. You must grow in stature, which is to say, you must do exercises, you must eat well, you must live a healthy life. You must grow in your relationship with people, you must also grow spiritually. For me, that is my appropriate definition of what success is. If you are wealthy and do not grow in these aspects, you are still not successful. If you are not as wealthy as you would want to be and yet grow in these aspects of life, then you must consider yourself a success. You must consider yourself a success. How about the other? Now, I said once you have the right definition of what success is, you must also pursue or identify your purpose and pursue your purpose to fulfillment, to fruition. Every one of us at creation came with a purpose. You must know what your purpose is. And as a clear indication, go back to your childhood and discover what were the things you constantly dreamt of or wished you were if you became an adult before the world messed up your thinking process. Go back to that dream and pursue it. To be successful, you must live a disciplined life. To be disciplined, you must respect and use time appropriately. To be disciplined, you must also learn daily. To be disciplined, you must know what to eat and what not to eat, where to go and where not to go, and so on and so forth. And finally, for you to be successful, you must pass it on to the next generation. Success without a successor is a failure. I say it again. Success without a successor is a failure. And in fact, success without a successful successor is a bigger failure. Thank you for your time and for joining me. Now, as I round up, let me say this. On Saturday at 12 I'm sorry, at 8 p.m. West African time, I will be doing a Zoom training on the fact that you and I were born to lead. Not many understand this concept. Now I'm inviting you to take a hint to register for this Zoom training. Now, the flyers are on Facebook, the Facebook page, Born to Lead Facebook page. They are on my Facebook page, Shedrack Bako. I haven't posted them on YouTube yet, but they're also on WhatsApp. Now, the number for the WhatsApp is the 080, or the last number on the scroll bar that ends with 3045. Now, go on WhatsApp, check for that number, check the status page. You will see the procedure for registering for that training. It promises to be an interesting training. It promises to be an eye-opening training. And I can assure you that once you register and listen to that training, your life will not remain the same. I can tell you that for sure. The moment you get a clear view as to why we live the way that we live right now as humans, why we consider leadership the way that we consider leadership, the moment you have a clear understanding of what that means, and then see the flip side of how you and I should have been living, I will tell you this, that your life will not remain the same. Things will change for you. So please do well. Go on Facebook, okay? Shedrack Bako. Go on Facebook page, Born to Lead. Go on WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number is the last number on the scroll bar that ends with 3045. Go on the status and you'll find out what it means to, or how it takes for you to register for that training. And again, I can assure you, if you register for that training, you attend that training, your life will not remain the same. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening to me at this moment. I will see you next week, Wednesday. Usually these trainings should be on Wednesday and on Saturday. I would make a preparation for the Saturday training and also post it out. Sorry, I won't do the training on Saturday because I have that training later in the evening for those who have registered for the training. So I'll see you next week on this live broadcast, and thank you for your time with me. Do have a blessed day ahead of you. Thank you.